So I got an email from you, Andrew, maybe like 3 weeks ago, or maybe like a month ago. And basically, you made me aware of some proposed changes that might be going through in 2022. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I made early on in my real estate career is that I got really good at making money, but I didn't know how to tax plan. Meaning, I didn't keep up with tax laws. I didn't keep up with what's going to change this year, what can benefit me going into next year. So, one of the commitments that I made is that from that point forward, I started tax planning. I started understanding taxes a little bit more. And I started learning some of the things that might affect my business, but also my client's business. So some of these changes are real estate specific. For example, like the 1031 exchange. Can you elaborate on some of the proposed changes for real estate agents, real estate investors, and people who own real estate that are potentially going to change in 2022?
Yeah, so everything we're going to cover today is like you said, potential changes. This has been talked about. We've had coronavirus stimulus packages come out both under President Trump and President Biden. President Biden has proposed a large infrastructure spending package. So there are going to need to be ways to pay for this spend that the federal government is doing. So what we're going to cover today has been talked about by perhaps President Biden or members of Congress on the Democratic side of ways to raise money. So none of these are in place yet. They could substantially change between now and what finally gets enacted, but it's good to at least be aware of what some of the potentials are out there that people can just be aware of. We are in a time of historical low tax rates. There is only one direction for tax rates to go, and that is up. And so maybe not all of these get passed, maybe only pieces of them do, but odds are something is going to happen here within the next, I'd say probably by the end of the year, we'll have more clarity on this and perhaps something actually passing through Congress and getting signed into law. So one of the first big ones that you mentioned that we want to talk about is 1031 exchanges.
Yeah.
So just to kind of step back on what a Section 1031 exchange is that is available to people who own real estate. They are able to sell that real estate and purchase a replacement property, another piece of real estate for investment purposes, and defer the gain on the sale of that original piece of property that they held. So for example, let's say I purchased a house for, let's say, $250,000. It is now worth $400,000. If I were to sell that, I would have to pay tax on $150,000 of gain. If I instead do a 1031 exchange, what I do is sell that property, making sure that I qualify for all the parameters of Section 1231, and buy a replacement property. So I buy another residential real estate property to rent out. I buy another apartment building to rent out, something like that. If I'm able to do that, I take that $150,000 gain that I have and I defer it into the purchase price of my new property. So people can consistently do these 1031 exchanges to push off paying taxes for years and years and years. So one proposal out there is the potential elimination of this 1031 exchange. And so that would mean even if I sell my original house, my original investment property, and replace it with another property, I'm still going to have to pay tax on that $150,000. So I, as an investor, am not going to have as much money available to me to go out and buy my replacement property. So that is one of the proposals that is out there. I've heard varying things on this 1031 exchange. One is the complete elimination of a 1031 exchange. It's not even allowed anymore at all. Another proposal that I've heard is potentially limiting it to you can only defer a certain amount of gain into your next property. Or the third way I've heard that this might come out is if your income is below a certain threshold, you'll still be able to do a 1031 exchange. The problem with that last one, though, is a lot of times when you sell a property, you have a gain. That gain is probably going to push you above whatever threshold there is. And so the 1031 won't be available to you. But it is something that has been proposed out there to at least tweak, if not eliminate, the 1031 exchanges.
Perfect. So for the viewers out there watching, the reason Andrew sent me this article is I did a couple 1031 exchanges last year, and he basically in his message to me said, Jose Luis, might want to read this article. If you're considering doing a 1031 exchange, another one this year, it may be better to do it this year versus holding off until 2022, because if this goes into effect, and obviously we don't know if they'll make it retroactive, but it would essentially change some people's game plan. So my advice to consumers is, if you're considering doing a 1031, if you've got a property where you're considering doing a 1031 exchange, it might be a serious consideration for you to do it sooner versus wait until something potentially happens.